Well, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you in D.C. this morning. I first want to thank you all so much for the invitation, Mr. President, Ed Kelly, General Secretary and Treasurer, a Massachusetts guy, Jay Colbert, our 3rd District President, and I have to be sure to mention our President of Local 144, Bill Hill. It's meaningful that I stand before this group today, one day after the 78th anniversary of the Strand Theater fire in Brockton. On March 10th, 1941, in Brockton, Massachusetts, 13 firefighters responded to the Strand Theater fire, but never returned home to their families. The impact was felt not just by the department, but by our entire city. And to this day, it remains one of the largest loss of firefighters' lives in a building fire collapse. That tragedy is woven into the fabric of who we are as a city. It's a story of heroism and resiliency. The heroism of all of the firefighters at that scene that night, but also the resiliency, not just of our fire department, but our entire city in the aftermath of that tragedy. 78 years later, not only do we still remember, but we are reminded of the risk that our firefighters take every time they report to work. Mayors have a truly unique relationship with their fire department. Unlike legislators and other elected officials, we're standing right behind you on the front lines. And while a mayor's most important responsibility may be to provide for the public safety, we also have the same responsibility to get every firefighter and every first responder home safely to their family at the end of their shift. As mayor, I've gained tremendous respect and appreciation for the work that's done on a daily basis by our professional firefighters. That respect was further magnified when I had the opportunity to participate in the Fire Ops 101 drills last summer during the U.S. Conference of Mayors. I don't think I could have ever imagined how difficult it could be to work and operate wearing full protective gear, or how easily you can become disoriented once inside. And I also got a great sense firsthand of how much you all rely on each other. Enlisting me to participate in that Fire Ops 101 drill may have been some of the best negotiating that our local 144 has ever done. I didn't even have the gear off yet when I told our 2 union reps that we needed to go out and get that new lighter weight breathing apparatus as soon as possible. And if I know Bill and Archie, they made sure I had the heaviest one available the day that I was there. In our city, my relationship with our firefighters is based upon mutual respect, mutual trust, and a recognition that we share common goals. And at the core of that relationship is the sanctity of the collective bargaining process. In the city of Brockton, we have 13 different collective bargaining units. That means 13 separate collective bargaining agreements. When I took office in January of 2014, 12 of the 13 bargaining units were out of contract, some of them 2 or 3 years out of contract. But in June of 2018, we had all 13 city bargaining units currently under a contract in just 4 years. We as a city are committed to the collective bargaining process. So as all you reps know, collective bargaining is tough. It's hard work. Sometimes we even get mad at each other, as hard as that is to believe. And by the way, I haven't always enjoyed the support of IAFF Local 144. In 2013, in my first campaign, I challenged a 2-term incumbent. Local 144 supported the incumbent. They were loyal to the mayor, and I understood that and I respected that. In my 2 re-election campaigns since, I have enjoyed the support of Local 144. And now, having campaigned with the firefighters against me, and having then running with the firefighters for me, I like it a lot better when you're for me. Successful collective bargaining is not about who wins. When collective bargaining is successful, everyone wins. Our firefighters realize that their collectively bargained rights and benefits protect both them and their families, while the residents know that they are safer in a community served by a professional fire department. Through collective bargaining, we're able to take on challenges that face both our city and our fire department. 2 years ago, we successfully negotiated a drug testing policy with our fire department. Not arbitration, not a court decision, but an actual collectively bargained policy. And that policy is built upon a compassionate response with the goal of getting our employee well and returned to duty as soon as possible. Our policy protects firefighters' rights, but at the same time allows the department, through the chief, to address a firefighter that may be struggling with a substance use disorder. We realize that our firefighters have families that we need to protect and keep together, while at the same time protecting the safety of that firefighter's brothers and sisters working in the same company. And I know that we have a lot of union representatives here, so please rest assured that we paid for the language. Yeah. At the collective bargaining table, the city and the firefighters union, working together, have been able to provide improved health and welfare benefits to firefighters. Today, we realize that a firefighter's health includes behavioral health. And together, we've made great strides in recognizing the impact of PTSD on our firefighters. And you know that far better than I, that in this job you respond to a lot of things that can be tough to get out of your head. As a city, we partnered with our Attorney General in the Home Base Program to provide training to identify signs of PTSD while working to remove the stigma of seeking assistance. It's important for our firefighters to have the resources to take care of each other. We're also aware that a high percentage of our firefighters are veterans who may be carrying unseen wounds of war. And while I do believe very strongly in the sanctity of our collective bargaining process, I believe that for collective bargaining to be successful, there has to be trust built between both partners. A couple of quick examples. About 2 months after becoming mayor in 2014, our city was hit with a huge spike up in overdose deaths. I asked our firefighters to begin carrying Narcan, or naloxone. Now, while our Local 144 could have held up the deployment of Narcan by forcing impact bargaining, they didn't. They believed it was more important to their mission of saving lives that they have naloxone in their first aid kit. And I never forgot that. And in case I may have, our Local 144 union president at the time, Archie Gormley, told me that he would be sure to remind me during the next round of contract negotiations. Later that year, we were able to obtain new dental coverage that was far superior to the old plan at the same cost. Well, instead of holding off on the new plan for the next contract negotiations, I decided to implement it immediately without asking the union for anything in return, because our families needed that coverage and because it was the right thing to do. Our professional firefighters are committed to ongoing training. In recent months, I've witnessed our Brockton professional firefighters training in the proper use of their new SCBA breathing apparatus, participating in active shooter drills, and participating in cold water rescues. I can think of no better example of preparedness training than this past November, when just days after training with other first responders to a simulated bus accident, Brockton firefighters were called upon to extricate a transit bus driver trapped in the wreckage of a crashed vehicle. Picture a dozen firefighters in and on that crashed bus, most working to untangle the wreckage to free the driver, others providing first aid to stabilize the driver, while one firefighter held that driver's hand throughout the entire ordeal, providing emotional comfort and support. There is no doubt in my mind that the simulated training completed just days earlier fully prepared our professional firefighters to respond more quickly and effectively, saving that bus driver's life. Recently, Brockton became one of a number of communities implementing a change in response strategy for an active shooter situation. Currently, most police departments' strategy is solely on taking out the actual shooter before providing any medical assistance to victims. And I think through experience, unfortunately, we've come to realize that many of these victims are bleeding out while we're still in the process of going to get the shooter. Now, under our new strategy, the first wave of police are still going after the shooter. However, the secondary response is to now have police escorting firefighters into warm zones to provide immediate first aid and extricate victims quickly into an ambulance. In their new role, our firefighters are wearing ballistic equipment in order to assist victims prior to the shooter being neutralized. And unlike many other communities, we agreed to impact bargain this change in working conditions, resulting in an increase in hazard pay for Brockton firefighters. So I'd like to leave you with a personal story of a fire scene as seen through the eyes of a mayor. I probably look at things through a little different lens than you do. So about 2 years ago, I'm riding in my car and I had the scanner on, as I usually do, and I heard a call for a fire in a nearby apartment building with flames showing out of the building. So going directly to the scene, I arrived just probably within a minute or less of when the first fire company got there. What I saw was the ladder pull up, a second-story balcony apartment with flames shooting out right over the head of an elderly gentleman on the balcony who was screaming for help. The firefighters, not even taking the time to deploy the ladder, grabbed an aluminum ladder on the truck, whatever we call that, hand ladder. Ground ladder, thank you. Grabbed the ground ladder, ran to the balcony. 3 of the firefighters in full gear, big guys with a lot of gear, went up that ladder. 2 of them went over the edge of the balcony, pulled the gentleman out. The 3rd firefighter carried him down the ladder, and they got him into an ambulance. It was one of the most incredible things I've ever had the chance to see. The 2 of those firefighters, the 2 firefighters that went over the railing, were both burned. Fortunately, not too severely, but they were transported to the hospital. And to really what stood out to me in terms of the professionalism and training of the firefighters is that one of those firefighters was the son of the deputy chief who was in command of the fire scene at that time. And that fire chief, Deputy Chief Davis, never blinked, never did anything differently, was in complete control of that fire scene at all times. And I'll never forget that. He had his job to do, he did it, he executed it with full knowledge that one of those ambulances was carrying his son to the hospital. As a mayor, I respect your professionalism, I honor your courage, and I appreciate what a professional fire department means to the safety of our residents. Thank you.